saying that. I was like, if they don't want to get on my ride for 20 minutes, then fine. But this is what I'm going to do. This is what needs to be said. And that was a really important moment for me to realize that, like, I'm going to make my work. And if it takes a long time to understand it, then, like, I appreciate you being there, because that's what it's about. It's about endurance, and it's about appreciation for that endurance, and knowing that. So,
and it takes someone to come in, to have that open mind, to come in and to watch it. And like I said in the beginning, I appreciate, as the viewer, as you kind of giving me that permission to just stop, because that's what I see. I'm like, I'm going to see what happens. And so when I watched your video of 43 and I saw what was happening, I'm like, there are going to be 43 bell rings. Mm-hmm. And I'm there. I'm making I can make a decision.
Yeah, you can bail out.
I can bail out.
Yeah.
Or I can stay. And it's all about, what are you going to do? So I'm like, I'm going to stay, because I'm always bailing out right now. This is what the media and this world is asking me to do,
right,
because of, like, my phone. So I'm going to stay. I didn't want to bail out, by the way, but that's kind of that's the decisions that you do have to make, and unconsciously, because we're so addicted to these.
Right.
And so you commit to it. And I think it's really interesting, because maybe there is a backlash to all of this that's coming, or is there now? And we talk a lot about the slow, and folks, who are, again, breaking things down and trying to get that sort of discipline back. I wonder if there's a backlash to it. And I think that your work is really important for that.
Well, that piece, that piece for me, it's probably the most personal piece I've made ever, and it touches some really deep-rooted pains and things in my life that I've had to acknowledge and let go of. It's I'll try to make it really quick, but, like, it's like 43 steps of catharsis, really. And sometimes I feel like through repetition, we're able to focus, and through repetition, we sometimes find pain, and through repetition, we find solace, and we find predictability, and then we can find a way to let things go. And so my dad was killed in a car accident when I was 16 years old, and he was 43 years old. And I remember, God, like, 43 is old, right? I'm 51 right now. And I've never looked at a number in my life with such fear as the number 43. And I remember when I was 42, leading up to my 43rd birthday, I was scared to death to turn 43 years old, because I knew that it would be a day of reflection, and it would be a day of comparing myself to him, and wondering where I was at that point in my life, and then looking back, and then also looking forward. And it was a tough day, and it came and went, and I was the same person the next day. But there was such dread and fear to reach that day, because my father and I had a very tumultuous relationship, a very, I would say, and it's taken a long time to admit this, but a very, very physically and emotionally abusive relationship. And I always swore to myself that I would never be anything like it. And that day came, and I had to take stock in what I swore I would never be. And I think from that day forward, I started thinking very much about him, and trying to reconcile those years and letting them just leave my life and be like, I'm going to be better than that. But then interestingly, the older you get, you also start looking back and being like, the biggest gift of my life, I think, was him passing away, because it freed me up to be the person who I am today. Because I don't think I would be the person that I am today if he were still in my life. Mm. And sometimes not wanting, what am I trying to say here? Sometimes realizing who you don't want to be is greater than like knowing who you want to be. And when my son was born, I swore that I would never be like him. But interestingly, I'm beginning to understand why he was the way he was. And so it took me a long time to figure out how I was going to make this piece. And I always had this vision in my head. I like there was an aesthetic. Like when you watch the film, mm-hmm. It's very minimal.
Yeah.
It's very geometric. It's full of cacophony. It's void of color. And there's only one element of color. And, there's that ship bell. And,
yeah.
Early in our conversation tonight, I talked about when I was a little boy, I would like look at these ship bells in the store, and I would be like, oh, I love the sound of them. I want one of those. And my grandfather always had a ship bell on the back porch of his house, and he would ring it at 6:00 every night. And that meant it was time to come home for dinner. And I remember the sound of that bell, and that one sound just like is always in my head. So I was like, all of these elements coming together, like catharsis and repetition and endurance and acknowledging this number, is really what that piece is about. So it's interesting, like you asked about, like, what are you making right now? And I'm like, well, I think those sphere pieces are the counter to the heaviness of like this film that I was trying to make,
Definitely.
So they kind of exist together, but they're connected, but very much different.
Definitely. Did you choose that day with the ocean being that way?
Yes, I was going to ask that.
That piece took me 2 years to make. Wow. And I knew exactly what I wanted. I knew that I needed snow on the ground. I knew I needed the gray, stormy ocean. I knew that there were environmental aesthetics that I needed to have to make this be what I wanted it to be. And that kind of relates a lot to a lot of my other work, my earlier work, which was about studying weather patterns and studying wave prediction models and being in tune with the weather so that I can surf, And so when you see the predictability in weather and you track storms and things and you know what they're going to give you, when you see all of these elements start lining up, I'm like, now's the time. Now's the time to do this. It has to happen today. And thank God. I mean, I was off from school. I was off from work, and I had assembled all of the pieces, and I had the sculpture ready to go. And I said to my wife, I'm like, I gotta go. Today's the day. I gotta go do this. And it's done. I think it's done. I think it's done. There's a small writing component that I want to do for it, but I think the visual is done.
Well, Kris, thank you so much for sharing all of that and just sharing your process. I mean, I feel so lucky right now as someone who really admires your work, and having you being able to share about your process and how you make these, how you go about it. I feel like really excited about that and inspired by it. Yeah, I mean, I can't thank you enough, and I'm hoping that the conversation was an enjoyable one for you and had the chance for us just to have our little drink here and kind of continue chatting about things and where we are right now, but also, using your work as a focus for that too. So I really want to thank you.